Hi everyone, my name is Lazanoff. I'm the Beef Operations Manager for Cal Poly's Animal Science Department, and I'm going to help Zach with his Grazing Management lab here by talking a little bit about what we do. So we're out here at our Cal Poly's Escuela Ranch, and if you don't know where that is, it's out by Cuesta College on the east side of Highway 1. And we have about 2,500 acres of grazing land out here where we run approximately 150 cow-calf pairs. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the history of this ranch. So this ranch was privately owned ranch land for quite a while until the war, and it became part of Camp San Luis Obispo military base. And it was part of the military base for about 20 years. And then after the war was over, after World War II was over, this land was donated to Cal Poly. So a lot of different things have been done on this land. A lot of abuses, and just the land was used pretty hard for quite some time. So I'll describe the ranch a little bit. So it basically on the east side of Highway 1 here, and goes up into the brush country up there. And it's, like I said, it's about 2,500 acres. We have approximately 30 different fields that we've broken this ranch up to, and an extensive water system also. And the reason we've done that is we use what we call, the grazing management that we use is we call high density, short duration grazing, or managed grazing, or some people call it rotational grazing, whatever you want to call it. It's a type of managed grazing. We don't just turn the cattle out in one field and leave them there year round. It's not a yearly, continuously grazed operation. So like I said, there's 150 cow-calf pairs in one bunch, and you don't see the cows right now, so we're grazing about 5% of the ranch with 100% of the cows at one time. The reason we do this is we're trying to replicate wild herds that were here pre-cattle, pre-human being times, that were kept tight in a bunch by predators and migrated. And basically they would mow and eat and defecate and fertilize that ground, and then they would rest it. They'd be gone. Example, like the buffalo migrated from Canada to Mexico in one big giant bunch. They were kept in tight bunches by the wolves and predators, and then they would graze it and then move along. Animals don't like to stay in the same spot where they've been standing around for quite some time, so they'll graze it, chop it off, fertilize it, and then they'll head on, they keep on moving. So we're not doing this with predators. We're using fencing and water systems to accomplish this. So the reason we like to do this is we're really trying to concentrate on the grass management. That's the most important part of raising cattle. Without the good grass and good soil, we wouldn't have cattle out here. And then without cattle, we wouldn't sell calves and we wouldn't make any money. So why is this a good way of grazing? Well, when we have all the cattle in one field and then we rest it, the cattle are grazing everything a little bit more evenly. They'll mow everything, and then they're out of here. They're not just out in the big field picking through, eating the good stuff over and over again, and allowing the not desirable plants to come up, such as thistles and toxic plants. So they're eating everything evenly. There's a little competition when they're all tightly bunched like that, and then we'll give it some rest. We move them depending on what we're trying to accomplish with that field, how many cattle we have, how big the field is, and based on observation, and that's how we'll decide when we need to move them. Most of these fields, it's about 2 to 3 days, some are 7 days of grazing, and then about 60 days of rest. And as the grass goes dormant and dries up through the summer, that rotation will also slow down too. With the even graze, we have no bare ground anywhere on this ranch that we can see, except for maybe a little bit on the roads, and even the roads we allow to grass up. We like to have grass on the roads because each mile of road's about an acre, a little over an acre of grass that we'd like to utilize also. And when you see, there's no loafing areas or areas where they'll hang out by a trough and create a bunch of bare dirt. We're trying to eliminate any bare ground whatsoever for obviously reasons, but the main reason is soil erosion, water retention in the soil, and those kind of things that go along with that. We have different kinds of pastures. We have what we call riparian pastures, and those are pastures with wetlands or waters or water systems or creeks that go through them. And those we're really trying to protect because of erosion. Water quality is huge, and we still graze them. We just use what we call the high density short duration grazing system on them also. When the cattle are in there, they mow it, they eat it down, and then we give it that rest. We're allowing those banks to heal up. We will increase the plant life that grows along the banks, sedges, rushes, perennial grasses, those kind of things that will hold the water, hold the soil, cleaner water, less erosion, and just more stabilized creek banks. So the other big thing that we're seeing, at one time California was an all perennial grassland, and after the Spanish got here in the late 1700s, and quickly after that, because of overgrazing or continuous grazing and non-native seed brought in, it became converted over to an annual grassland. So with this high density type grazing, we are starting to see an increase in our perennials again, that there hasn't been that many. Perennials are important because perennial grassland doesn't die, it just goes dormant. It actually has a deep root system which sheds its roots, and the shedding of the roots builds organic matter in the soil. The more organic matter in the soil, the more moisture the soil will hold, the more grass grows. It's kind of a cumulative effect. So we will see right now, because of the increased rainfall we had this late spring, we see a lot of our annuals right now. It's hard to see the perennials, but if you look closely, and we'll kind of point some of these out, we're seeing a lot more perennial grasses throughout this ranch. The other benefit of the perennial grasses, they grow through a drought, they'll grow through frost. And like I said, their most important thing is that they build organic matter in the soil. An annual grassland grows from a seed each year, is eaten and blows away, and is actually a soil miner. It kind of takes nutrients out of the soil. I'm not saying the annual grasses are an excellent feed source for our cattle, but if you're looking more towards the long term, we're trying to build more of those perennials. We'll never get rid of all the annuals completely, but at least a balance of some perennials and some annuals would be good. So maybe we'll go around here and we'll look at some of this riparian area and point out some of these different types of grasses that are going here. The other thing that's important with this is, I haven't talked about, but soil health is super important. We'll be taking more soil samples out here along with grass samples, just to see if we are trying to improve the soil health out here through our grazing management. So let's go look at some grasses. Okay, we're going to look here at some of the native grasses that we have here, and non-native grasses, and some of the plants that are pretty typical of the Central Coast here. We have a lot. I'll point out some of the annuals, the non-native annuals that are brought in with the Spanish right now, but are good feed. This is what we call soft chess. It's pretty prevalent in this part of the country. It's got multiple seed head there. Another one that's a great feed source for us, it's a non-native that comes up a little bit later in the spring, is the annual rye, and you can see it has alternating seeds here. Very strong and high in protein. The cattle really like it, but it is a non-native annual, but it's still a great feed. A plant that's really important to us, that's a great feed source, it's not a grass, is fillory. And fillory looks like this. It gets these little darty little seed heads on them, and then in the summer when they dry up, you'll see they get a little corkscrew on them, and that's how they get stuck in your sock and move along. That is an excellent feed source for cattle here in parts of California. A non-native plant, but really high in protein at certain times of the year, and even through the summer when it dries up, it's a great feed source for the animals. You'll see fillory get really big where the soil's very healthy, and over the years with probably continuous type grazing, this fillory's gotten shorter and shorter. In the old days, people talk about fillory being 2 foot high. So as we see our soil health improve, these plants, some of these annuals actually are getting stronger too. So those are some of the main. Wild oats is another one that's right here. I will bring it to you. Wild oats you'll see everywhere. That's a pretty typical of a non-native annual feed in California. Excellent feed source for cattle also too. So there's a million different plants out here. One thing about the high density grazing, we're starting to see a more diversity of plants. Like I said, more annuals, more perennials, different kinds of plants all in one spot. Besides grasses, legumes, and forbs, and all these kind of things growing, instead of having just a monoculture out here. And the reason that is good, the cattle get more of a well-balanced diet, and possibly even eating things that are probably a little bit toxic in high amounts, such as alkaloids and tannins, but in low amounts may be beneficial to them, such as parasite control, those kind of things. So too, but then I'll talk a little bit more, but you can see the pink fillory flowers out there. There's quite a few of them. There's also some plants out here that are less desirable feed source. One of them is the cattle really don't like it at all. It's an annual grass. It's called ripgut brome. You can see it's really sharp and a little bit coarser to eat, and the cattle they will eat it if forced to, but it's not one of their favorites. The other one would be that's not desirable. They will eat it till it gets a seed head on. It's called foxtail barley. Not a great feed, and you'll see these plants, the ones that are less desirable, in areas that have probably been hit a little bit harder or grazed differently, or there's just not the perennials right there too, but and they're intermixed too, but in areas where it's really been hit hard, you'll see the non-desirables come up. Also thistles. too. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the perennials that we have here. And one of them is called purple needlegrass, and I'm not going to tell you the scientific names right now, but and it looks like ripgut brome, but it's got a much softer seed head. The cattle will eat it. It's a native perennial grass. It's actually our state grass, and it grows in little bunches, and it's hard to see all these perennials right now while our annuals are taking off. In the summer though, or during a drought, you can really see these perennials because they'll keep growing. They'll have roots up to 20 feet deep, I believe. So but that's purple needlegrass, and you'll see little bunches of it throughout there, and it takes a little bit of a trained eye now to see it good. In the summer though, you'll see these quite a bit too. And then another one that's really prim is one of the creeping wild rye, and there's many of them in California, and I can see some of it right now. It's a little bit thicker grass. There's many of these different kinds of creeping wild rye here. You can see it grow bright green in the middle of the summer. All the annuals will be dried up, and you'll see some of this green grass. And having a little bit of green throughout the summer is huge for our cattle. There's more protein in green grass. The dry grass will be down to 3.5% protein through the summer, and this green grass will help them nutritionally throughout the summer, which decreases the amount of supplementation that our cows need too. And when you can see some of these darker grasses out there growing if you get out here and walk around, and we're starting to see more and more of these perennial grasses, or be able to see them more anyways. I don't know if they've been there and we just were short, or if we're starting to see them spread, which it looks like to me since I've been here. So a lot of people will do grass monitoring, and we'll work on that through our range management group out here too. With this type of grazing management, we're really starting to see a lot of improvement on the ranch. We know it takes time. It's not an overnight fix from a continuous grazing program or from other things that have happened, but we're really starting to see all these little green seeps that come out of the hills. In the summer, they're getting larger instead of smaller because the cattle will mow them and move along for quite some time, instead of being in that field year-round where they just keep going back and biting off that green grass. And so every little green seep, every little green plant, native, non-native, whatever it is really added up and really decreased the amount of supplementation that our cows need. We don't feed these cows at all any hay. We do supplement a molasses type protein block in the fall before calving, just to get them through some of that dry grass season. But we're really starting to see a difference in the diversity of grasses, the amount of green grass throughout the summer too.